Sarah Gallop Designs. Sarah is a registered interior designer and principal of Sarah Gallop Design Incorporated, a full-service design firm specializing in residential interiors. A regular contributing writer for Black Press and Glacier Media, and a featured columnist for West Coast Homes and Design magazine, Sarah's commitment to functional, timeless design has won numerous Georgie Innovation Awards, and she is currently a finalist for 13 Georgie Awards to be announced at the end of this month. With an open, friendly approach to projects, Sarah's team guides clients through a seamless and fun design experience. So please welcome to the stage, Sarah Gallop with Renovation or Build New, What's Best for You? She's coming, I promise.
How's everybody doing? Oh, good, I like it. So how many of you are kind of asking that question right now? A few? Who's just looking for a seat? You've been walking around for too long? Yeah, a little bit of that, but that's fair. I get it. Okay, so as was mentioned, we're going to be talking about renovations or new builds. So if you're contemplating, how far do you go with a renovation before you're basically better to start over, we're going to go through a little bit of that today as well. So a little bit about me, as mentioned, Sarah Gallop from Sarah Gallop Design. I'm a registered interior designer here in the Lower Mainland. I'm also a writer for West Coast Home and Design, so if you guys picked up a show guide, you may have seen there's a little sketch that we do in there where people submit their ideas or their questions and we give them ideas on how to solve design problems. We mostly do new build projects. About 55% of our business is new build, about 35% renovations, and about 10% commercial design. We have projects all over the Lower Mainland, up at some Sunshine Coast, on the islands, and even down into the States in the interior. So the first thing to do when you're kind of contemplating is put something down on paper with what you're trying to, like, what are your goals? How much space do you need? What kind of rooms might make up this new home? Location-wise, do you want a yard, or are you living in the city? Do you want something smaller? What is the purpose of this project? Whether, again, we don't know yet which road we're going down, but we're trying to figure it out. So what's the purpose for this? Is this a forever house for you that you're going to live in, for all of eternity? Or is this a house for a quick sale, or even, a down the road sale? The other thing that you can think about too is what kind of style are you interested in? Are you more on the modern side, or are you more traditional, maybe somewhere in the middle? A great spot to go and kind of think about styles if you go onto Houzz. How many people are familiar with the website Houzz? Not that many, actually. So write this down if you guys are taking notes, HOUZZ.com. It's an excellent resource for design ideas, inspiration. And the nice thing about that website is you can actually search. So it's a really, really good resource. We'll probably chat about a little bit more about that later. So once we have our wish list of what we're trying to accomplish, we can kind of get a little bit further into this scenario. So there's essentially 4 routes. The first route would be to renovate your existing home. How many homeowners do we have in the audience? Quite a few, okay. So that would be the home you're currently in. Or you could build new on your existing property. You could renovate on a new lot, so you're out in the real estate market trying to find, something that might fit your needs to renovate, or build new on a new piece of property. So when you're going through your wish list that we just created in the beginning here, some of the things that you write down might start directing you in a certain way. So that's why we kind of document that first, get it on paper, start thinking about your ideas, and that'll start to formulate a bit of a path for you. So in the renovation of your existing home, some of the big questions are the neighborhood. So a lot of people that we deal with have been in their homes for a long time, and they love their area, or they love their neighbors. And those sorts of things might be difficult to get somewhere else. So that might kind of, again, push them down the road of it makes more sense to renovate. The other thing we want to think about is, can your neighborhood sustain the renovation, the type of renovation that you're talking about? So are the lot values, the property values in your area going to support it? Can you even renovate to change the house to get what you want out of it? That's a very, very big question. So for example, if you had, let's say, a split level home, and you wanted to create a home that might help you age in place, so you wanted something that was very accessible, that might be very complicated or difficult to create in your existing home. So that might push you down the new build road or to renovate a different property. So those are how you kind of start crossing off routes on your list as you go through all your questions. So yeah, the last point there being, is the renovation that you would need to do to your home so significant that you really are better to start over? So where do we start? We need to look into feasibility on your existing home, or again, actually a little bit later we'll talk about on a different home. This is on your existing home right now. So feasibility, so what's possible? If you need to add more space, can you actually add more space? Or is your home already what we would call kind of built to the max? So you've used up all the square footage that you're allotted on your property based on zoning calculations and that sort of thing, setbacks, etc. Is the layout conducive of new needs? So that's what I was talking about with, if you're dealing with a split level and you really need a ranch or that sort of thing, does the house allow for these changes to be made? And then get something on paper, start looking at some conceptual plans and really think about, are these plans that I'm considering going to give me what I want to accomplish out of this? And then you need to start having some conversations on budget. Obviously that's a really, really important one. And start thinking about, once you go down this road of, okay, I'm thinking I'm probably gonna wanna renovate. So you go down the road and you do your feasibility, like, yeah, I can add space to what I want, I can get what I want out of it. Does it make financial sense to do this? So here's just an example of, this is a project we did a couple of years ago. On this side of the screen here is the before floor plan, on the far side is the after. So basically what we did with this client was we went through their wish list, same sort of thing I'm suggesting that you guys put down on paper, and tried to give them some options for what they might be able to make changes to the home to accomplish what they were trying to go for. So you can see here what we've done is, a lot of people have the formal living room, dining room, and it's really underutilized. It's like just at Christmas or maybe Easter, when the grandparents are in town or something like that, and it's really wasted real estate. So we're finding a lot of our clients are really wanting to go for more of an open concept plan, perhaps without the formal living and dining, but more of kind of one big family space. So what we did in this particular case was actually relocate the kitchen to the far side where the family room currently is here, and then created one space and then a study at the front, because that's, again, what they were needing from a functional point of view. So I've got a couple of photos here. So this is this home that we're talking about right now. So we're standing, if you can see, right in the middle of this picture here, kind of looking towards the back. And then we'll have the same photo as the after. So there's the before, looking towards the family room and dining at the back of the house. And then the after. So standing in the same spot, looking back at the home. So completely different function. And so for the clients, they couldn't imagine how they could get from here, from here to there. So it's nice sometimes when you have an outsider come into your home, we're not emotionally attached to it. We can look at it very unbiasedly and make suggestions, and you can still say no, that doesn't make sense for you. But it's nice to see something on paper, then you can say, yeah, that's really good, that makes sense for my family, or no, not at all what I want. So now we're going to talk about new builds. So we have to do feasibility for new builds as well. Obviously trying to figure out what's even possible. So if we were looking at building on your current property, what square footage can you build? What kind of zoning issues might you have? Are there height requirements, restrictions, setbacks? Oh wait, there's always these things. So it's a matter of going through and seeing what's the box that you can actually build within, and does that give you what you want? If you're actually out looking on the market to purchase a property to build, are you looking for a vacant property? Or is it a property that has a home on it already that you need to demolish? All those things need to be factored in when you're thinking about the overall cost of these projects, because obviously demolishing a home has a cost associated with it. So we need to budget for that as well. So the big question is, what does this all cost? How many people have been out, the people who are kind of contemplating right now, whether they renovate or new build, how many have talked to builders or designers or architects about per square foot cost? A couple people have? Okay. Have you been getting a very wide response on answers? Yeah. The reason for that is they don't know what you're doing yet. So it's really actually hard for them to give you a cost. And we're going to go back into that a little bit later. But there are a lot of numbers out there in the industry. We see things on a new build point of view, usually from about $200 to $350 a square foot. You can be 400, 500, 600, 700 up. It depends on what you're building. So there's a really, really big difference. If you're building a very kind of what we would consider to be more of a spec home, your cost would be lower than if you wanted something really high-end custom. So I'm going to be illustrating that a little bit here as well. So this is what I was just talking about with new builds. So before you have anything on paper, it's really hard for a builder to give you anything that is accurate because they don't know what you're going to do yet. So the problem here can be if your builder does give you some rough numbers, that you may have a problem down the road with insufficient allowances because they don't know what you're going to select yet. And the problem there is, you might make the decision to go down the road of, yeah, we're going to build a new house, we're going to buy this property, I want to put this size of a house on it, and you've kind of committed to doing it, and you don't really have a budget that means that much yet. So as I said here, you can build a house for $175 a square foot, but the thing that, if you guys take nothing else away from this, other than this one point, is that might not be the house that you want to build. You can build a house for that, but just make sure that the costs that you're looking at match up with what your wish list, your dream list, what you're actually wanting to accomplish with the project. So level of finish obviously will factor into that a fair bit. The composition of the home will factor into that a fair bit. If you've got a lot more bathrooms going into the house, or fewer bathrooms, more bedrooms. Bedrooms are cheaper to build than bathrooms, etc., right? So square footage is tough to base it on. So as I said, the biggest thing that you want to do is just get something on paper. So you can start having conversations with builders or renovators that mean something and are accurate. So until you've got something on paper, it's really, really tough for anybody to give you anything that has any weight. This is an example of a conceptual package that we produce for our clients who are looking at doing a new build. So essentially we've done the feasibility, we figured out what's possible to build, and then they've said, okay, I want 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and whatever the makeup might be. I don't want a formal living room, I do want a formal dining room, whatever that is on the wish list. And come back to them with something as a starting point for conversation. So this is a home that you actually could build on your property based on what you're asking for and your site conditions. We might have a few images for conceptual ideas, level of finish, things like that. But it's a starting point for conversation. So usually what happens is we would do a preliminary package like this, figure out what's possible, present that to the client, tweak it a little bit, sometimes, quite often, just a little bit of tweaking, and then they can start having those conversations with the builders, because then you've got some point of reference. It's still not all of the information by any stretch, but it's somewhere that you can say, okay, I'm building this home, it's this many square feet, it has 3 bathrooms and this and this and this, it's square or it's round or it's whatever it is, because building a round room is going to cost you more than building a square room, those sorts of things. So it just gives them a bit more information. They can start thinking about, how much lumber is going to be going into this, how much roofing, how steep are they, what kind of details we've got, all that sort of thing. They can start estimating a little bit more accurately. So for us, this is usually, a 3 or 4 page document. Obviously, the bigger the house is, the more information we need. This one's relatively simple. We would also include a rough conceptual of the exterior of the home as well and how it's situated on the property, because I think that those are things that you really need to start understanding to know that you want to go down that road. What's this house going to look like? How much yard am I going to have left over? Where does it fit with, a big tree that I've got in my yard, or the tree has to come down? Whatever that situation is, I think you want to know that early on. And then we get into the 3D conceptual rendering. So again, that would be a little bit later, but just done up so that you can understand what you're actually going to build. So the budget conversations, the fun stuff. So you want to talk with your builders early on, but not too early that it's almost unfair to them to be able to, give you something accurate. Because you don't want to get so far down the path of committing to this renovation or new build and realize that you can't afford it, or you don't want to spend what's required to do what you're asking for. So you can develop a preliminary budget off of an architectural plan. And again, that's not going to give you full spectrum of what's going to be involved, but it gives you part information. It's better than nothing, quite a bit better than nothing actually. And then you can have your builder do up a preliminary budget for you. And at that point, you can come back to your designer if you're working with one, or if you're not working with a designer, it's your shopping list allowances to play with on selecting your materials. So things like tile and flooring and cabinets, countertops, light fixtures, plumbing, etc. All of those things at this stage in the game would be a best guess from your builder, right? Based on similar projects that they've done, of similar size, similar level of finish, that sort of thing. But again, they don't know what you're going to pick yet. So they're going to put some rough numbers in there. And at that point, you can go either out to the stores or talk to your designer and say, this is how much we've got. Is this going to allow for what I'm trying to do? And if you're working with a designer, such as ourselves or somebody else, we would know you well enough at that point to have a pretty good guess, again, on level of finish, quality, what you're thinking, and be able to say, yes, that looks like a reasonable number for that thing, or no, this one might be a little low, but this one might be a little high, so we can probably shift it around, whatever it might be. So we want to look really closely at the allowances, because otherwise what can happen is you're going down this road of you've picked your builder, you've got your budget, but then you select things, and the things don't match, and then all of a sudden you're way, way, way over budget. So you just want to make sure that you're tracking that as you go. So how do you choose a builder? Anybody know good ways? No, I don't know what to do. Okay, so what I would suggest is get references and go through the homes that they have built. Talk to the homeowners if you can, which is a really, really great source of information. Find out how much those homes cost, and talk to them about their experiences. You can also talk to the builders themselves about things like warranty, what happens after things are done. You can start talking about rough schedules, again, rough budgets if you've got your preliminary plans. You can talk to them about their accounting and their billing, cost transparency, whether you're getting source invoices or if they have something that you can log on to online and track it as you go, all those sorts of things. The other thing too is at the end of the day, you kind of gotta go with your gut. It's how are those people making you feel? Do you feel like you can trust them? Do you feel that they're being straight up with you? Do you feel that you can work with them on a daily basis? Because realistically, these people are in your space. They're in charge of the dream. So you want to make sure that you can really get along with them, because they will be a big part of your life for a good portion of time. It could be a year or more. You can also talk to your architect or designer about recommending somebody that might be a good fit for you. We work with a lot of guys. We're invested in the outcome of your project as well. So we get to know you. So we can always say, these people might be a really good fit for you. Go chat with them, see what you think. You don't have to commit at that point in time. You can wait a little bit, but it just starts the conversation. So this is what I was talking about with the quality difference and level of finish. So this is an example of a project that we did a couple years ago. It was a penthouse in the Greater Vancouver area. The building was 1 year old, so essentially brand new. And the client purchased this unit with the intention to renovate it with a higher level of finish. So this would be kind of what we would consider spec quality. So kind of entry level, relatively basic, nothing crazy fancy, appeals to a wide range of buyers. And the client wanted to go in there and change it to make it a little bit more representative of himself. So this is the kitchen before. Again, looks like a kitchen, functions like a kitchen. But what we can see here, and I'll go back and forth between kind of the before and afters just to illustrate some quality points. And this is why it's really hard for builders to estimate cost per square foot. Because if you look at the before and you look at the after, it's the same size thing, right? So it's a kitchen, it functions as a kitchen, it looks like a kitchen, but they're very, very different things. So they don't know, when you're talking to them early on, they don't know if you want this kitchen or this kitchen. They just don't know that yet. So what we're looking at difference-wise here is obviously style, which is less of the conversation, but just level of finish and detail. So you can see in this photograph, the after, the cabinets go all the way to the ceiling. What you can't see is that this is a higher quality of cabinetry with plywood construction. We've got dovetail drawers. It's just versus the original kitchen here, which was melamine, thinner construction. We didn't have any soft close. We didn't have all those little details that a lot of people really do want and ask for all the time. We don't have built-in appliances. We've got relatively simple kind of entry level. And that's totally fine if that's what you want. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. All I'm saying is you have to understand the difference between the two. And if you're asking for this and your builder's pricing this, we have a problem. So just make sure that you're on the same page. So other things that you'll notice here, again, cabinets not to the ceiling, there's no crown molding. We have tile in the kitchen and laminate in the family room. We have 2 centimeter import quartz versus a North American made, non-built-in appliances. We've got a microwave hood. Again, relatively simple and basic, still functions as a kitchen. So in our after, we've got, as I said, we've got custom glass, we've got custom gas backsplash, we've got Wolf Sub-Zero appliances, built-in 3cm marble countertops, wall paneling, herringbone floors. All these things are decisions that you have to make. Doesn't have to be this, doesn't have to be that, but they're just things that you need to decide on, and they do affect the overall cost. So this is an example of the bathroom in the same unit. Again, lower quality kind of entry level, still functions as a bathroom. This is the after. So these homeowners, for the most part, didn't really change the layout or function of these spaces, they just changed the aesthetic and the quality. So this is the one exception where they did actually increase the size of the shower and take out the tub. But apart from that, it's essentially the same space. So again, when you're thinking about a per square foot cost, the cost of this space and the cost of this space are not the same. So we've got, again, our 2cm quartz, we've got an acrylic base for the shower, we've got very basic wall tile, simple plumbing fixtures, nothing is custom by any stretch. In our after, we've got custom mahogany vanities, some really beautiful marble tiles. All those things are just different decisions. So just factor those in, heated towel bars, kind of all those luxury items. So when I was talking about House earlier, chances are if you're looking on House, the website, you're seeing stuff like this, not stuff like this. So you want to make sure that that's communicated well to your builder so that they're pricing the proper things for you. And if you do a full design package ahead of time before you commit to your builder, then it's very, very easy. They know exactly what you're building and they can price it accurately. So here's another example. This is spare bedroom, I suppose, in the same penthouse. So we've got basic carpet, we've got basically just paint and some simple doors. And this is our after. So again, the higher end floors running through, the herringbone walnut. We've got custom millwork, we've got solid wood doors. You can ignore the furniture, obviously that's not really a comparable thing. But the point is, they're different. Again, very, very simple. This is actually one of my favorites. I don't know how many people will recognize this light fixture up here. Can you see them? So you probably see them at Home Depot for like $10. How many have one in their house? I see hands up. So again, you just have to know what you're getting into and make sure that the expectation is very clear. Because what can happen is that's the first thing I think that starts to, if the expectation is not set right, that's what leads to disappointment. Because you're disappointed that they haven't priced it accurately, and then you kind of start off on a bad foot, and the trust starts to go. All those sorts of things kind of lead you down this path of uncertainty, and you really want to be really sure what you're doing before you're spending all this money, because renovations and building new homes are not cheap things. I think we all know that, right? So what we're looking at here, again, very simple lighting. We've got some drops because they had to, plan in these, fire sprinklers and that ducting, that sort of thing that really was just kind of slapped up wherever it needed to go. Laminate flooring, basic kind of blinds. In our after, we kind of integrated the drops that were necessary for all those things, planned it through so it looked intentional. So we've got some ceiling treatments, we've got our wood floor again. We have nicer light fixtures and automated blinds that you can integrate with your system, so just kind of everything comes down on itself. So again, just different level of finish. So how many people will admit that they have champagne taste on a beer budget? I'm guilty myself, not gonna lie. It's very, very common, and it's not, I don't think that it's intentional. I don't think that it's even a negative. I think that people just don't know what they're getting into. So a big part of that is research and educating yourself and making sure that you're an informed consumer. Because the more you know, the more you will understand what things cost, why they cost that, and not have unrealistic expectation. So again, it's not that people are cheap. I think it's just that they just legitimately don't know. So this is kind of what I was talking about with the difference between spec and custom. So we have things in the spec side like laminate flooring. On the custom side, we might have things like solid wood or engineered hardwood. Spec side, we might have laminate countertops, or as I mentioned in the photograph, a 2 centimeter stone, maybe an import stone. On the custom side, we'd have higher end quartz, marble, or granite, and that's everywhere. Sometimes we'll see listings where a real estate listing will say like, oh, granite countertops, but that's just in the kitchen. It's not necessarily throughout. So again, you just want to educate yourself on the comparables and what that actually means. A lot of the time, spec homes will see the same materials used throughout. So every single bathroom you walk into is the same bathroom. So when we're looking at custom, the reason that they do that is because it's cheaper, right? So it's from a cost efficiency point of view and a material utilization point of view, it's much easier to just do the same thing everywhere. With a custom home, you may have different schemes and different bathrooms, for example, or different bedrooms, just to make it a little bit more personable. Usually it's for a specific person. And then for spec, the thing I was talking about with quality of cabinetry. So this is actually really, really important because it's not something that you can see really easily from the outside. I mean, we can, but to the untrained eye, cabinets look like cabinets look like cabinets. You're just looking at doors. Whereas if you actually open them up and go inside and really investigate the case good construction, you would notice a big difference. So a melamine cabinet or a melamine door or a vinyl wrap door is a lesser cost item than plywood cabinetry, dovetail drawers, solid wood doors that might be painted or stained. They're just different things. So again, you educate yourself on that, then you know what's worth what in the industry. Crown moldings might be only in a couple of areas, if any, in a spec home, whereas in a custom home you might have them throughout everywhere. So spec home, not a lot of pot lights usually, or if there are some, they're larger. We do have sometimes those Home Depot specials that do pop up. In a custom home, you'd have very well thought through lighting, quality light fixtures, and just a different. The thing with lighting in a home is that lighting is super impactful on the way that you feel in spaces and the way the materials are rendered. So it's not like lighting is something you really, really don't want to kind of do the basics on, because it really will impact the way you feel in the space. So for bathrooms, for example, in a spec home we might have prefab shower bases, so it's like the white acrylic. Sometimes they're a color, but they're a solid base. You might have a prefab shower enclosure, so you'll see sometimes in these homes we'll see a shower that doesn't quite maximize the space that we have because that's the size that the pan comes in. Things like that. So in a custom home we would have a full tile base that goes wall to wall. You might have some custom niches, frameless glass, which a lot of people are asking for. Whereas, over on the spec side, we might have a little bit of frame. It still look totally fine, but again, just a difference. So the spec home might have cheap hollow core doors, relatively basic, and then again, there's a huge range on that. In a custom home, we may have either solid wood doors like you saw in the photographs, or even a solid core painted door. This spec home may have very...
In the Vancouver Sun Gardener School,
It's gonna wait a second.
Pam Danglemeyer and Elke Wininger. 1 container, 2 container, 3 container more. Maximizing your garden in a minimum space.
So in the spec home, we may have very, very minimal built-ins. And again, the quality of millwork would be different. In a custom home, you'd have more significant built-ins in more areas. You might have office, you might have media, all those different kinds of spaces. And then other things that you usually don't see in a kind of entry-level home, things like heated tiles, so new heat mats. Also your heating systems might be different. There's a lot of different options for heating, whether you go with a heat pump or a furnace or geothermal or radiant heat. All those things have different costs associated with them. Any sort of home automation. So that's what I was talking about with the blinds. You can do automatic blinds that will kind of set to certain scenes. You can integrate your lighting, your sound. There are some now that I believe that also you can integrate with smart appliances. There's certain appliances that can talk to your systems. And you just set it all up ahead of time. So security, things like that. So you can view them from your iPhones and iPads when you're out. And finished home theaters. Quite often in a spec home you may have a space that is intended to possibly be a theater down the road, but it wouldn't be a fully finished out space with all the bells and whistles. And again, that's an area that you can get really crazy with from a dollar's point of view. You might want a relatively basic home theater. I want a TV and I want some sound and that's it. Or you might have a complete projection system and acoustic paneling on the walls and all these sorts of things. So again, just factor in the cost of all those items. And your builder, he just doesn't have that information at the beginning to be able to give you a cost for those. So is there anybody out there that's thinking about buying a home to renovate, like a new home? Like when that, maybe, okay. It's really hard to know the cost ahead of time. This is the one kind of risky thing. So you kind of do have to be really, really careful if you're thinking about buying a property with the intent to renovate it. Just because the time that you have to close or to remove subjects on a property doesn't usually give you enough time to do proper feasibility and also proper planning and therefore get a proper budget. So you can bring, we've consulted on many of these, you can bring a builder in, you can bring a designer or an architect in, but all we can really give you is our best guess. And again, it's hard because we don't have all the information, you don't have all the information, so the biggest thing that we'll say with this is build in a big contingency and try to do as much research ahead of time as possible before you go down that road, because it is a little bit difficult because chances are you will not know the cost of, like, the actual accurate cost of the renovation before you close on that home. And unfortunately, I have heard of people who have bought a home, not consulted with anybody ahead of time, bought the home with the intention of, I'm just gonna push this out here and do this and add this, only to find out that they can't actually do those things. And that's really not a good place to be. So please be careful if you're contemplating renovating a new home that you're going to purchase. So that's all I have today. Does anybody have any questions about the path or whether they should renovate or new build? If you've got specific questions, I'm happy to chat with you afterwards as well. But if anybody has any general questions that they want to ask, feel free to stick your hand up and we can come around with a mic. This is such a quiet audience. Oh, we have one in the front here.
Okay, so if you're on a certain budget, is there certain things that you can do not custom and then customize later?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing there is planning. So usually what we recommend to people to do, are we talking more renovation, I would expect, or either way? Okay. Yeah, in either scenario, you can plan for future. So the goal is to figure out what you want it to be when all is said and done, when it's all perfect and wonderful and lovely. And then your builder, designer, architect, etc. can advise you on certain things that could be done at a later date. So if you're trying to bring the initial cost of a build or renovation down, there are things that you can either do in phases or leave out and do independently later. Like built-ins, for example, are really easy because you can create the space for it and actually put the built-in in later. Yeah. Other things that could potentially wait till later. I'm sure there are, honestly. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but yeah. Sometimes it's scope driven as well. So for example, if you wanted to renovate a home and you had a certain threshold of pain threshold, we call it, budget, essentially, for the first part of what you're willing to want to do at the beginning. What you could do is, there's only two things that drive the budget. Scope of work, how much stuff you're doing. Another thing is the level of finish, like I was talking about, right? So I would recommend changing the scope versus you can change the level of finish to some degree. There's some things where it's like, yeah, that's just a silly thing. I can get almost the same thing for, half the cost, but it looks about the same. So there's some things that you can change there, level of finish to bring the budget down. But the other thing is scope. So if you're doing a renovation and you have, let's say, the whole house planned, and it's more than what you want it to be, you could leave part of it for now and do it as a phase 2 or a phase 3, or just plan out what your overall goals are for when it's finished. Like when you're totally happy with the house, what does it look like? And if you know that, you can, in the first phases, or the first 1 or 2 phases, you can plan for the future ones. So you can always rough things in for easier access for later, if you know what those things are going to be. And so if you're going to do something like that, you really have to plan well, because you don't want to do something just like, I can only afford to do the kitchen right now, so I'll just do that and not think about anything else. But later I want to do the bathrooms. What if the bathroom's right above, and then you move things around later and you have to reopen up your kitchen, or you don't because you decide not to do something up there because you don't want to affect what you've just done. So you just want to make sure that you plan it really well. Yeah.
Next question has to do with when deciding to renovate or build an older home. Where is the turning point there? What makes you decide to build or to tear down and build rather than renovate?
The unfortunate thing is there isn't like a general rule of thumb. It's usually based on the condition of the home and how significant the changes are that you're making to it. That comes back to that wish list I was talking about at the beginning. So if you've gone through the wish list and really the home can function the way that you want it to, and it's the size you want it, and it's the neighborhood you want it, all those sorts of things are positives, it just comes down to the prettier stuff, then look at the cost of that. Chances are that's worth keeping. Again, it's hard to say 100%, but chances are. If the home is not the layout at all that you want, is that split level versus rancher, 2-story, whatever it is, the configuration, and it's in poor condition, chances are you're going to be more likely to go with a new build. But there's a lot of gray area in the middle, and that's why you have to get something on paper. I've had clients quite often that have gone down the road of, what do I do? It comes across my desk a lot, and we've done feasibility and rough planning on a renovation with their wish list to see how close can we get it and what kind of rough costs are we looking at to do it. I've had some that have continued down that road. It's like, yeah, actually that gives me pretty much what I want, and let's do it. Or, that makes it really clear to me that I should go over here. So sometimes you have to kind of invest a little bit into, just a little bit, to get to the point where you can say, very certainly, no, that doesn't work, I need to go here. Or, yeah, that's actually really good, let's do it, right?
So, this lady knows that there's different levels of finishing, but what about the stuff that's underneath the finishing? Like the
There's
basic
different
stuff.
levels of that too. That comes back to one point that I had made was things like heating systems. Insulation, there's code, the kind of bare minimum, but you can go quite a bit up from there. So those are the types of things that chances are you're not going to change after the fact, right? So if it came down to a dollars thing, which it quite often does, and it's do I do I upgrade my insulation, or do I do that built-in? Those, let's say that just for the sake of it, that those are about the same cost. The built-in you can do later. The insulation you can't. Put the insulation in and get your built-in next year. Those are all those sorts of things, and there's lots of quality of windows, that kind of stuff. You're not gonna in 2 years rip out your windows and put new windows in. That's just silly. But you could finish out certain things later, right? So again, it comes down to that balance between scope and level of finish. And some things will matter a lot to you and some things might not. And so when you're having those conversations with your designer or your builder or whoever, we can again educate you on the pros and cons and you can decide what's best for what you want. Yeah. That's it. Are we all good?
Okay, so when you're getting ready to start, you've got a wish list of things that you want. What do you do next? How do you start with getting in with a contractor? Those sorts of things, right?
I'm biased. I'm a designer, so I'm a little bit biased to a certain process because I think that typically design comes before construction. So I think you should talk to a designer before you talk to a contractor. The way that I look at it is a bit of a check-in. It's like, go a little bit, yeah, we're still good. Go a little bit, we're still good. It's kind of a check-in point, which is why I would suggest talk to a designer or an architect, depending on what you're doing. Do some rough feasibility and some rough plans. Check in with a builder. Is this about what I'm comfortable spending? Okay, then let's detail out those plans to a point where we can actually go for a permit or whatever it might be, and then have the builder price it again. A little bit more accurately. Then we can go back to the designer and say, okay, let's pick our finishes, do our interior drawings, fixtures, etc. Okay, once we've selected those, go back to the builder. Because at the end of the day, you're just shuffling back and forth to get to that end goal, right? But if you go 100% down one path without having any check-in, you could go 100% down the design path, get to a point where you're like, yeah, I love this house, is great. Oh, I can't afford to build it. You know what I mean? So if you go a little bit, I think that you're probably best off. As I said, if you go down that contractor road first, it's hard for them because they just don't know what you're going to do yet. So the numbers don't really, I actually think it's an unfair spot to put them in because it's just a guess. For us it's a guess, for them it's a guess. We just don't have the information to be able to tell you anything accurately yet.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Can we give her a little round of applause? She did a great job.
If anybody has any specific questions, as I said, I'll hang out for a few minutes so you can come over and chat.
And in about 15 minutes here on the main stage,